We all know the story of Noah and the Great Flood, but according to some researchers, there could be as many as 200 different deluge stories from ancient cultures throughout the world. So this begs the obvious question in terms of science: what single causality could yield such a global diversity of deluge stories? For that we look back to the 1940s. A Chilean astronomer by the name of Carlos Ferrada first postulated an explanation that accounted for all these deluge stories, an explanation based on two objects. One he calls the Black Star, and the other an object he called Hercules, or what we know today as Planet X Nibiru. According to Ferrada, Hercules is a large comet planet charged with cosmic energy in an elliptical orbit between the two suns of our solar system and its smaller dark twin nemesis. A man of great intellect and insight, Ferrada tells us that this object does not follow the established celestial laws, which in turn explains its bizarre behaviors. He also predicts that during the next coming flyby, this massive object will come within 14 million kilometers of Earth, and that it will be seen with the naked eye, visible from every point of the globe. Yes, we will all see it, and we will photograph it, but when we will all come to believe our own eyes, that might be quite another thing. Hopefully, it will be in time for us to find safety from the coming cataclysm. That shall be it with the horrific event predicted by Edgar Cayce, a great American known as the Sleeping Prophet. A pole shift, and so what would the celestial mechanics of such an event look like? It would look like the one that haunted Ferrada in this 1999 interview. It states there are also many things which is unfortunate for mankind. It is not ready for the change that comes. The destruction comes. And above all, will affect humanity in its existence, in its production, and in its own subsistence. As our research team watched Ferrada in this interview, what tore our hearts were not the words, but rather the obvious pain of awareness etched on his face. We all know the pain all too well, for it is an echo of our own knowing of the horrific cataclysm to come, and which causes it, so we call it the Ferrada-Cayce pole shift. It first began in 1781, however the area started of a point of our journey today is much closer to our own time. 1940. A Chilean astronomer by the name of Carlos Munoz Ferrada first begun taking about an object he called Hercules. Today it's called Planet X, but he also talked about not one but two objects. Hercules is the same planet Zecharia Sitchin, author of the 12th planet, describes as Nibiru, according to the translations of the ancient Sumerian texts, and according to Sitchin, it is 4 times the size of Earth. But of even greater concern to us is the Black Sun, as Ferrada calls it, a binary twin to our Sun, that is 56 times the size of Earth, and it is the core object of a mini constellation we call the Planet X system, which in turn orbits around our Sun, much like a comet would. Therefore, as Ferrada is the pivotal figure of this program, because he was the first professional astronomer to talk about the Planet X system, as we call it, back in the 1940s. This small sun, as referred to as a black sun, is actually a brown dwarf star known to the present day astronomers as Nemesis. The brown dwarf are a small protostars that lack the mass to sustain hydrogen fusion, like so many. Consequently, they are very dark stars and extremely difficult to find. It is why they're also referred to as failed stars. In fact, the existence of a brown dwarf stars wasn't theorized until the 1960s, and back then they were initially called black dwarfs. Consequently, it wasn't until the 1988 before the brown dwarf was discovered. As of 2012, over 1,800 of these brown dwarf stars have been discovered. We know them today as brown dwarf stars thanks to the American astronomer Jill Tarter, who first coined the term in the 1970s. It's interesting to note that the area of Ellie Arroway, played the Jodie Foster, was based on Tarter's astronomical work. The modern hunt for Planet X began with the deep space probes Pioneer 10 launched in 1972 and the Pioneer 11 launched in 1973. These missions established the existence of something that was causing the mass, and it was huge, that altered the areas of both probes. The infrared astronomical satellite IRAS was launched to image that mass according to the NASA. NASA felt that the missions could be completed. However, several government whistleblowers have since come forward to say that IRAS has in fact imaged Planet X. It is also important to know that the disclosures of these whistleblowers are consistent with the news accounts. That time most notable, that was the New York Times article published on January the 30th, 1983, which states, more credence was given to the hypothesis that a brown dwarf accounted for the mysterious force. Moreover, a brown dwarf in the neighborhood might not reflect enough light to be seen far away, said Dr. John Anderson of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. Keep that in mind as we move forward to 1988. This is a 2013 capture of Dr. John Anderson NASA bio page. So what we know about the astronomer is that he does indeed work for NASA, and that he has been following the topic of Planet X for years. Frankly, he's in a league of his own, and as the last of the honest astronomers to come forward on this topic, in June 14th, 1988, interview with the Victoria Advocate titled Pioneer 10 Still Searching, Anderson is directly quoted as saying, "We have 92% confidence that Uranus and Neptune are being disturbed by one candidate. For that, it is a single Planet X." Sourced from the Google News, Yowza.com first published the Victoria Advocate interview with Dr. Anderson on March 18th, 2012. In the article titled "The Planet X Cover-Up" in the mainstream media, immediately after publishing of the article, entire Victoria Advocate edition that day was removed from the Google News Service site. No doubt our tax dollars at work once again. Read actions aside, 1988 was still a well-weather year for Planet X research thanks to the efforts of Dr. Harrington, Chief Astronomer, United States Naval Observatory, because in October that year he published a paper titled "The Location of Planet X." And here you see Dr. Harrington being interviewed by Zachariah Sitchin, author of The 12th Planet, for the network documentary. The interview, Dr. Harrington showed such an orbital diagram for the planet area. Enough in this illustration created by Dr. Harrington, we see the description orbit of Nibiru, the very same planet that Sitchin maintains exists according to his translations of the ancient Sumerian texts. It is likewise noteworthy that Harrington commissioned the construction of a special telescope for the Planet X Sky Survey, which was conducted in 1991 at the Blackbirch Observatory in New Zealand. These observations were based on Harrington's calculations, and the films were delivered directly to NASA and never seen again. And in that manner of speaking, neither was Harrington. Reported in the Yahoo.com article, Planet X and the Mysterious Death of Dr. Harrington. This courageous astronomer died in January 23, 1993, from a rapid onset of cancer. Many believed he was assassinated, and so do we. Today, NASA has replaced the Planet X research of men like Addison and Harrington with a Planet X debunker by the name of David Morrison, a man who maintains that Planet X does not exist and who never misses an opportunity to humiliate anyone with interest in the topic. So, in response to David Morrison, I offer my first Planet X article published in January 2002 as a way of introducing pithy insights of a man who helped me to write the article. He was Dr. Brian Jeffrey Marsden. At the time, he was a senior astronomer at the Smithsonian Astronomical Observatory. Regrettable, he passed away in 2010, and the horror to his memory, I believe something he told me, and the best way to respond to David Morrison. A failure to observe an object only means that you have failed to observe an object. It should be noted that following the mysterious death of astronomer Robert Harrington in 1993, the Planet X topic went dark in the mainstream media because it had become a death topic, and with that we now know it's a big step forward to the year of 2006. On April 26, 2006, Yowza.com was the first to break the story of the South Pole in the terms of Planet X SPT, as it commonly referred to as is the 10-meter diameter telescope located at the Edmonston Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica. Simply put, it is an ideal infrared telescope for observing anything rising up from the southern skies, like the Planet X system and its brown dwarf. The official reasons given for the constructing of the telescope is the area of the region of the world sound noble, but in fact, do you justify the expense of the Edmonton Scott South Pole Station is only accessible by a way of specially modified C-130 aircraft, consequently flying in the telescope and its supporting building? With the efforts, this is why the same exact science could have been done for a fraction of a cost elsewhere in the southern hemisphere. So why not save the money with a better location? Well, as we pointed out in the article, this was the ideal place to observe the southern approach of Planet X system, and the time then came the news we hoped for in 2008. A whistleblower posted Planet X images taken with the SPT on YouTube under the name Nibiru Shocked 2012. Here you see the images he posted on this video that were captured by the SPT in January 2008. What is clearly obvious here is that we can see and looking at a mini constellation and not a single object taken of enhanced look at these images. What we see is the strong infrared signature of a brown dwarf star and between 5 to 7 planets in orbit around it, depending on how you defined a planet in this close-up provided by Nibiru Shock 2012. He also points out that the brown dwarf has a tail. This can be attributed by the fact that Nemesis and the brown dwarf seen here in the center of the image is surrounded by a massive dust disk. If we could actually see this brown dwarf in space, it would look like something similar to the emanation. The problem this presents for us here on Earth is that it's some point in the future will pass through this dusk disk if we're not already doing so. Edition of the January 2008 images provided by the Nibiru Shock 2012, a second whistleblower came forward in May of that year. With the SPT image, this second whistleblower named the SPT source in the video, and the government removed it within hours. After it was up with this in mind, we have retracted the information so that for the first time you can see what this source provided him. And this brings us to area of the volcano. Using the surveillance camera images captured from the area of the volcano, we began ongoing observations of an object I initially dubbed Bluebonnet on January the 7th of that year. The site for surveillance camera is on the 10th parallel at an altitude approximately 11,000 feet. That shows the object entered the constellation on December the 1st, 2012 and was well inside the constellation of December 21st, 2000. That means that the prophecy, Nostradamus, for this object was in fact fulfilled exactly as predicted. Bluebonnets, as we first called it, are near the Sun, so all the objects near the Sun, it can be only observed before sunrise and before sunset. Also note the eliminated of this accepted explanations for this object, such as being the planet Venus, which is not. In fact, this is not calculated as an object. It has been observed from this location with not one but with 3 different camera systems since early 2010. Having captured literally hundreds of images of this object ourselves, we began to wonder if Bluebonnet, as we call it, actually Nibiru, outermost orbital planet X system. Before computers, a library with answers to the burning question. But today it takes a few keystrokes, and the next thing we know, the questions are delivered to electronic ether. From there back pops the answer. But once we have the pieces in questions about the certain things will happen with regard to the Planet X system, what we get back is a rat's nest of orbital irregularities that cannot be reconciled. Why is this? In 1962, the Japanese astronomer by the name of Yosuke Koza explained why it's so difficult to get the priceless answers of a simple question. It is called the Koza complexness, with the orbits of the objects affect each other in space. Also tells us that the more objects you have, more complex with solutions become, as in the case of the Planet X system flyby. There is simply not enough computing power on the surface of the Earth to give priceless answers to a simple question. But beneath the surface of the Earth, such may power exist. Was recently announced that the IBM was developed what we call the computers that make the brains design the liquid-based transistors suspended in an ironic liquid that acts like neurons in our brains. While we're hearing about the civilization applications today for the latest decade of government has using several of these computers in the underground facilities, and their computing powers are simply awesome. To understand the powers of just one computer, let's begin with a supercomputer such as used by the governments and universities today. Keeping this computer in mind, imagine that you could multiply its numbers by 100 times to create a computing cloud of 100 supercomputers all working together to process the same data. Then multiply that cloud of 100 computers 100 times, and what you'll have is the computer figure power of just one computer. It is that enough computing power to install a rat's nest of causal mechanisms, orbiting solutions. Only our government has the answers that question, as they know they do not share well with others. We humans have amazing computerized skills because we have the ability to tap into cosmic consciousness, a power source that dwarfs anything possible within the area of the computers. To such men who have tapped into the power of the cosmic consciousness, our astronomer Carlos Farada, other and Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, like Edgar Casey, Farada had the special gift. He could enter into trance when he was researching, and while in that state he could write and draw the cosmic knowledge he received. It is how he developed his theory, dynamics, which is based on the attractions of heavenly bodies, large explosions in the sun, and cycles of geophysics disturbances. It is also why, when we see Farada's deep sadness, that it cuts me like a knife, because I know he has seen with cosmic clarity the incoming flyby of a globalist and the black star, and it's not a wondrous thing to behold, rather it is horrifying that. Let's begin with a simple overview of what we see. The Planet X system attributes begin in speed. According to Zecharia Sitchin, the word Nibiru means the planet of crossing, and according to Farada, its speed when it's at its closest distance to Nemesis is 92 kilometers a second. Farada also tells us that when it is the closest distance to our sun, it is traveling at a speed of 76 kilometers a second. But what is really interesting is that while it is on a long leg of its journey to speak, Nibiru is traveling a whopping speed of 300 kilometers a second. In terms of this situation, it makes Planet X system of the scientist mechanism on asteroids. No wonder our government spending vast sums of money on underground computers. Meanwhile, what will those of us on the surface see of Nibiru moving along its orbital path, when depends if it is coming or it is on this orbit relative to us, the blue shift, red shift. Astronomers use the term blue shift to describe what we see when an object is coming towards us. With the blue shift, the light waves are compressed, and so the object appears bluish. To us, this is when an object is going away from you. It appears reddish, because the light waves become elongated. When it's coming at us, it's blue, and when it's going away from us, it is red. January 23rd, 2014, of Nibiru captured the third camera system installed at the volcano in Costa Rica. One cannot help but wonder if they are seeing Nibiru turning back in its orbit around Nemesis. No doubt we will see more cycles of this blue shift and red shift before this flyby of the Planet X system through the core of the own inner system. It is also explained in the ancient Hopi prophecy. The Blue Kachina prophecy tells us that we will see the object in the sky. It will bring a huge trouble following, that we will see the red Kachina, and it will cause the great suffering for us. The Hopi assure us that this happened before it has happened again. This now brings us to the attribute of the size. We have lived on Earth, and so it is natural that we humans have an Earth situation with the viewing of the cosmic area of the sky. When it comes at a long distance in space, the core measurements is called an astronomical unit, which is roughly the distance of Earth to the Sun. For the reason all likewise use as Earth model, it defines the size of Nibiru and Nemesis. According to Zecharia Sitchin's translations of the ancient Sumerian texts, Nibiru is the size of 4 Earths, and according to Carlos Farada, the Nemesis brown dwarf he calls the Black Star is the size of 50.5 Earths. Granted, when it comes to the area of the size that matters, However, it will come to the impending pole shift. It's all about mass. In terms of a pole shift, resulting from a flyby of Planet X system through the core of the system of mass and not the size, is the key measure. In his book, The Time Machine, author H.G. Wells presents a scenario of which our moons are fractured as a result of the reckless mining and construction techniques, as a result that humanity is also fractured into the piece of the situation of the monstrous area who feeds upon them. This is a very real scenario because of something called tidal force. To put this in context, imagine the moon would suddenly disappear, in which case the entire surface of the world would collapse approximately 18 inches. No doubt that would most likely result in an extinction level event for humanity. So in terms of a pole shift event, where the gravitational force of Nibiru and Nemesis gained through the sphere, our planet of these forces will pull the skin off our planet once again. Size doesn't matter, rather the pole shift force will equal the mass of distance. With this in mind, our best estimates for the mass are as follows. We give Harrington's Planet X 2 to 3 Earth masses. Burn through the Nemesis we place at a 24,726 Earth masses, and that's no lightweight in the final analysis which we drive to the pole shift. And what we know is that these 3 golden rules of a premium state: location, location, location. Edgar Cayce pole shift presented an explanation of how life evolved as a planet. It caused this situation, and it predates what currently teaches which Darwinism with creation of this situation. Cycle evolutions goes through long periods of this situation by brief moments of extreme violence which recorded life on the planet of this situation. Like Darwin is based on data awareness, is based on behalf, therefore there are no time frames. This is because Darwinism and this situation are based on deep time understanding of this evolution of life on our planet. And what we are about to encounter will be one of the most briefest moments, extreme violence of recorders' lives on planets. But in our first scenario, we're just not going to record life on the planet, we're going to destroy it. Phaeton of this hypothetical planet happened and was catastrophically event with the tour of the planet. Apart from sending fragments flying into space, these fragments then became the asteroid belt and now exist between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. So our first Planet X flyby scenario will be Phaeton event, and we will see Earth opposite side of the Sun. For the poorer, Phaeton is the bone to be chewed as Nibiru and Nemesis close on its of this postulate with the destructive force that tore poor Phaeton apart. Visitors who came and take to Universal Studies tour of the Red Sea since the movie The 10 Commandments were given a great insight to the real fact of cinema magic. However, when they removed the magic in the allegory of the story, recorded the plagues of the scientific orders, the 7 thunder of hail, what the recording story Exodus tells us is the meteorite shower is falling on us from a dust disk surrounding Nemesis is the first plague. This plague will be repeated itself. The earth is pelted by this dust disk. We'll see meteorite showers and likes of which could be imagined. The damage of these meteorites will cause the long lasting because they will contain something called this Cherubim site, deadly combination of iron, nickel and phosphorus only found in meteoric iron, and the iron of this sulfur sites are the cause of the plague in the biblical account, namely the turning of the waters to blood. Understanding why, simply visit a local brickyard They tell you in order to make those wonderful red bricks, we can see and decorate our homes with the add of iron to mix through this. Again overturns the waters of the colour, and it will result in the dramatic reduction of this probic drinking water for all of us. Meanwhile, the phosphorus of this area of sight of the warmer of the temperatures such of these were taken, seeing these days will trigger huge blooms of blue and green algae. These algae blooms will generate vast amounts of microsystems which are highly toxic and can kill plants and animals and humans. And here our illustration of the Exodus scenario. We find Earth on the opposite side of the Sun, just as we was during the Fatum event scenario, with the noticeable explanation at this time of this Fatum expression of this situation. So what can we see of these first two scenarios is that Earth fortunate enough to be on the other side of the Sun during this final stage of the Planet X system flyby. So what's happening if we are not so lucky? In the 2008 Project Camelot interview, government whistleblower Bob Dean announced that our worst fears would be realizing during the coming flyby, that Earth would be on the wrong side of the Sun as the Planet X system began its downward track back into the farthest reaches of our solar system. No doubt astronomer Carlos Ferrada saw this, as well as he predicted that during this coming flyby, Nibiru will come within 14 million kilometers of the Earth. Consequently, the pole shift, as this predicted by Carlos Ferrada and predicted by Edgar Casey, will happen. Okay, thank you for watching this broadcast of information. I'm going to provide you more information of more of a situation of what is happening out there in our solar system. So God bless to every single one of us in our community as we keep on researching for Planet X. From Matt Rogers, God bless you all.